Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. I'm your host Calvin Timms, and today I got a solo podcast just going to be talking about the DeAndre Hopkins news. I know Dale put out a little YouTube short, so go check that out if you haven't just yet. But I'm going to be giving a little bit more in-depth thoughts here today, talking about DeAndre Hopkins signing with the Titans, and the takes that I've seen everywhere are just wild to me. They're all over the board, and we're going to talk about it a little bit here today, and I'll give you my thoughts. Before I do that, you can find me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin. You can find my co-host Dale at Dynasty_Dale if you want to check out some of his stuff as well. You know, we're pumping out this content. We're in the middle of the NFC offseason recap, so hopefully you guys are enjoying that. We're going through all 32 teams, so if you haven't checked them out yet, please go check out those videos. Ton of work going into those, and yeah, it's a lot of fun for us to recap everything for these teams. And we've already covered the Tennessee Titans, and luckily we did it right after DeAndre Hopkins signed, so you can see a little bit more of our thoughts on the whole team there. But today we're just going to be talking about the impact of DeAndre Hopkins. Like, what's he still going to be worth for Dynasty? What's his impact going to be on Ryan Tannehill? What's it going to be on Treylon Burks? And kind of going through that a little bit more in depth. And one last thing really quickly, if you're listening to this, check out the YouTube channel. We are Dynasty After Dark on YouTube, or you can check out we're also available audio only on Spotify, Apple, Google, anywhere there. So if you're watching on the video formats, you know, we are available audio only. If you're listening audio only, we're available on YouTube as well. And really quickly, if you can, just like, comment, subscribe on the video. I know I'm tired of asking all this stuff too, man. I really am. But for whatever reason, it's whatever seems to get people to actually do it. So got to call for it every single time. I don't love it, but it is what it is. So we're going to talk about the Tennessee Titans and DeAndre Hopkins here. So DeAndre Hopkins, 31 years old, and formerly, I guess, one of the top players for fantasy football for many, many seasons. Last couple of years have been a little bit of a bumpy ride for him. He has not been able to finish as a top 10 dynasty guy for a couple seasons now, but you know, he's had limited seasons, but he's been playing a ton in those, or he's been very productive in those shortened seasons, I'll say. And what should we expect from DeAndre Hopkins in 2023? Well, quickly, I wanted to just show you the stats from last year. You know, Ryan Tannehill, he only played 12 games. 2 years ago, when he played 17, they had 531 pass attempts. In 2020, 481, right along those lines. I don't think we're going to expect too much there. So 531 passing attempts for this offense. What is that going to lead to in terms of target distribution and things like that? Well, last year was obviously a weird season, right? So, you know, this is right after they get rid of A.J. Brown. They draft Treylon Burks. He's a rookie coming in, and, you know, they have Robert Woods as the de facto number one over here. Not really the best group of pass catchers. Chigakonkwo, who everybody's really excited about last year, was a rookie. And, you know, what should we expect from these guys? Last year was just every one of these teams in the NFL, they have years where they're going to have a down year, right? Where they're kind of retooling their offense. It felt like last year was the worst of the worst for the team, right? And if you go back to 2021, that's kind of the last time that we saw an actual competent offense for the Tennessee Titans. If you look at the target distribution, A.J. Brown was the leader with 105. Number 2 on the team was Nick Westbrook-Akine with 57, Julio Jones with 48, Chester Rogers with 43, Anthony Ferkser, tight end, with 43, Jeff Swain with 40, Jeremy Nichols, Dontrell Hilliard, Derrick Henry. So I think for this upcoming season, the way that it's going to break down, again, you have 500 some passing attempts, right? Derrick Henry has gotten more and more involved in the passing game the last couple of seasons. I think we can probably pencil him in for another, 30, 35, give or take, which is going to take a little bit of a chunk out, but not much. You got guys behind him, Tajay Spears, who we're really excited about. I think that he's going to have an increased workload in the passing game. You could probably pencil him in for about 50, 55 as long as he stays healthy, obviously. Now, that leaves about, give or take, 420 passing attempts. Now, they're not all going to be completions, yada, yada, yada. But I do honestly believe that when you look at this receiving corps, you've got DeAndre Hopkins, you've got Treylon Burks. Behind those two guys, though, you've got Chris Moore, Kyle Phillips, Nick Westbrook-Akine, you've got Racey McMath, you've got Chigakonkwo at the tight end position. There's not a superstar depth of talent there available. And if you can pencil Chigakonkwo in for probably around maybe like 60 targets, I think would be ideal for him. I don't think that they're going to see a massive increase from the 46 that we saw last year from him. So you uptick that just a little bit there. Maybe you got 60. Now we're down to about 360 attempts left. I think if you break that up again amongst all the wide receivers, the other tight ends, I think that it's very possible they're going to try and get one of these other tight ends involved, but they do have a new offensive coordinator as well. I could see Chris Moore getting around 50 targets. I could see Kyle Phillips getting around 50 targets. Also now, okay, you're around maybe 260, 240, somewhere in that range. DeAndre Hopkins, his entire career, right, has been a volume machine. And that's where I think it's going to be a little bit of a disappointment for him, because I think Treylon Burks is ready to take the next step. He had 54 targets as a rookie, and he was okay. He got better as the season went on, never really got fully healthy. You had that little bit of stretch in the middle of the season. I think that Treylon Burks is probably going to demand around 85 to 90 targets. That leaves, again, without any other wide receivers getting involved here, you're around 150 for DeAndre Hopkins, and I just don't see him getting that much volume. I think he's probably going to be around 120, maybe even less than that, 110 targets this upcoming season. I think the split between him and Treylon Burks is going to be pretty close. Maybe 90 for Treylon, 110 for DeAndre Hopkins. And it's all going to depend on health and things like that. So if DeAndre Hopkins is only going to be getting about 110 targets, right? We can see from last year, he only played 9 games, but in 9 games, he got 96 targets. And, you uptick that by about 15, 20 targets, and it's not going to make him fantasy relevant, unfortunately. And I think that's where the older DeAndre Hopkins is not necessarily the best for fantasy football. I think there's going to be weeks where he's going to be good. Obviously he had a week where 21 points, 35 points, 15, 20, 20. Like the back half of the season, he was very good, but he was still getting a ton of targets, right? And it took 14 targets, 13, 14, 12, 11, 11. It took that many targets for him to actually get utilized, right? And to be relevant for fantasy. I don't think he's going to be able to get that many targets if you're bumping it down that drastically, right? Because you're taking what he got in 9 games and averaging that out over 17 now. Given that he's going to stay healthy, you're cutting that in half almost, right? And that's where it's going to be 7 targets. Well, all of a sudden from 7 targets instead of 14 targets, 10 catches for 103 yards, 7 targets, maybe you get 6 of them for 65 and you got 12 points. So it's like half of his fantasy production in 1 week is just gone, right? And I think that's where you're going to be realistically expecting DeAndre Hopkins. Now, I think he's going to finish as around wide receiver 30, probably around 30. I think the touchdowns were down last year, and DeAndre Hopkins is a good red zone threat. But again, you involve someone like a Treylon Burks, who is more of an explosive player. That's where DeAndre Hopkins is more of the sure-handed, move the chains type of guy. That's what he's kind of become the last few years. Treylon Burks is more of a, I'm going to hit a big play with this guy, and he's going to house it from anywhere. He had 1 catch for 25 yards and a touchdown last year against Philly. 6 targets, 4 catches for 70 yards. The average yards per catch is outstandingly good. He's in the green on Sleeper, which means it's good. Yards per target is very, very low, but I think that's where DeAndre Hopkins comes in, and he's going to eat up the underneath targets, and they're going to open up Treylon Burks for more of the intermediate and deep targets. And again, I think that Treylon Burks, his ceiling is a little bit higher than DeAndre Hopkins, just due to the way that he plays the game. He's more explosive. He's looking good. Everyone has said that Treylon Burks is coming in looking a lot better than he did as a rookie, right? He hit the gym this entire offseason, and there is that impact too, where these guys get drafted right out of college. They've got about 4 months because they finish their bowl games or whatever. They go straight into the combine, then they go straight into OTAs or into the draft, and then OTAs, and then all the offseason stuff. They don't really get downtime. Treylon Burks got that this offseason. He was able to focus on himself and getting himself more ready and things like that. And that's where I think that you can see a big jump up from him this year. But again, I think that the targets aren't going to be there to make Treylon Burks a superstar in fantasy football. I think that there's going to be signs that he can take that role. But with DeAndre Hopkins here, and again, this is assuming health for DeAndre Hopkins, which we'll touch on here in just 1 second, I think more than 1 touchdown is going to be easily projectable for Treylon Burks this upcoming season. I could see him around 5-6, where DeAndre Hopkins I could also see around, he had 3 last year. He's kind of been around double digits to the higher single digits most of his career. So I think if you put him around 8, Treylon Burks around 6, that feels about right for the passing game. Right there, that puts, Ryan Tannehill is in the mid-20s. I think that most of those are going to come from those 2 guys in general. So maybe a couple from Chigaconquo, and you're right there in Ryan Tannehill's kind of wheel park, right? So I think that Treylon Burks is going to finish right around the wide receiver 2, 23 to 28, somewhere in that range. DeAndre Hopkins is going to be in the 28 to 36 range. He's a low-end wide receiver 3 or high-end wide receiver 3, I guess. And that's, again, 100% health from both of these guys. Now, talking about the health really quickly, Treylon Burks last year only played 11 games. DeAndre Hopkins played 9. He had the suspension for 5 or 6 games at the beginning of the season. So we got to take that into account a little bit there. But at the end of the year, it's a little bit iffy, right? Because by week 16, when he played 93% snaps, didn't really get targeted much. That's fine. But after that, in 17 against Dallas, the Cardinals were completely out of the playoff race. There was nothing that they were even playing for at all. So they could have tried to shut DeAndre Hopkins down. We don't really know that. We don't know all the context. Maybe he wasn't feeling up to it, so he kind of, played it up a little bit. Oh, my hamstring's bugging me a little bit, so I just don't want to play the rest of the season kind of thing. When he was healthy last year, or not suspended, I guess, when he was on the field, he played from week 7 to week 16 and only missed 1 single game. He played a ton of snaps, and we saw that. Treylon Burks, on the other hand, he started the season off, I won't say fully healthy. I don't think he was ever really fully healthy last year. Week 5, missed a big chunk of games, missed a month, comes back for another month, misses a couple more games. That was with the devastating concussion, if you actually remember that game. The one where he caught the touchdown in the end zone. That's the one catch for 25 yards against Philly. Gets just pile drove into the ground when he makes that catch. Gets concussed. I think he got knocked out, if I remember right. Holds on to the ball. Everyone's praising him for that, but it was a very unfortunate situation that he just got completely wrecked on that one play. And, you never love to see that. Well, they hold him out the rest of that game. The next couple weeks with the concussion stuff, last year was very heavy on the concussion piece of things. Comes back against Houston in week 16. Maybe they're trying to ramp him up a little bit, but then the last 2 weeks has a little bit of a better performance there. So, again, this is all without Ryan Tannehill because he missed a chunk of games there at the end. So, what does that mean? What does that boil down to? If I'm investing in somebody, I'm going for Treylon Burks still, obviously, but I do think that people need to temper their expectations with Treylon Burks. I've seen people, and myself included, like, I still believe in the talent of this guy. I really do. I think he has what it takes to become an A.J. Brown style player. Maybe this year he can do that. We need to see him get over 100 targets. I think if he can get over 100 targets, that's where he can maybe jump up into the high-end wide receiver 2 range there. But I don't think that he's going to get that this season. I think it's going to go more to DeAndre Hopkins. Now, DeAndre Hopkins specifically, so Treylon Burks, sorry, I'll finish off on Treylon Burks before I jump over to Hopkins. If I'm buying Treylon Burks, I think it'd be for a low first, and that's very conditional. That's if you still believe in him and if they're willing to sell him. I don't think you're going to be able to get him for that right now, unfortunately. Maybe this year is going to create a massive buying window for Treylon Burks. I think that people are going to be down on him after this season just because of the lack of production due to the competition for DeAndre Hopkins. But that said, I think you're going to see signs this year that you want to invest in this guy for the long term. And I think in year 3, we're going to see a massive splash because DeAndre Hopkins at that point will be going into his age 33. I think Treylon Burks at that point can solidify himself as the number 1 in this offense. And now DeAndre Hopkins, what I'd be willing to give for him is like a mid-second. And again, the reason why is, and again, I don't know if you're going to be able to get that for DeAndre Hopkins. He was very productive last year in a pass-friendly offense. This is going to be a control-the-ball, run-first type of offense. He had 96 targets in 9 games. That's a, not quite, but about 170 yard or target pace for the entire season, which is just crazy. Crazy unsustainable, for sure, right? When you're averaging 14, when you have 14, 13, 14, 12, 11, like you cannot average double-digit targets for an entire season. It's just crazy. That's Michael Thomas single season record type of pace. But I think that he can still be good. I think he can be, again, a high-end wide receiver 3 that you can throw in your flex from some weeks. But I don't think you're going to be able to rely on him for those boom weeks. I just don't think that's in his game anymore. There's going to be weeks where he has maybe 1-2 touchdowns, but it's just not. He's not going to be the focal point of this offense. I think Derrick Henry's still going to be the focal point, and they're going to want to control the game as much as possible. It's very possible that the Titans are the contenders for the AFC South. I know a lot of people like the Jags, but I think this team is still very, very good from our breakdown. If you heard that, go listen to that again. But that said, this is my thoughts on these 2 receivers and what to expect from them. I wanted to do a little bit of a deeper dive just to give our thoughts on it and, give a little bit of context as well, because I've seen so many people saying, oh, this kills. DeAndre Hopkins is going to be elite. He's going to be a top 10 guy, and Treylon Burks is going to be completely worthless, or it doesn't matter at all. Treylon Burks is going to be number 1 wide receiver. And I know I'm being a little bit hyperbolic with that. Nobody's saying quite that much on these guys, but people have been all over the board, and I think you just need to look at it a little bit more critically from a more analytical lens, that people are just trying to be emotional about it, and you just need to calm down a little bit there. Like I said in one of our breakdowns, we're trying out a new slogan. We're gonna try and make this a thing. It's gonna be Mims, right? Because we love Marvin Mims. That's the reason why. No, it's gonna be make it make sense, man. Like, all these takes, if it doesn't make sense, why are we just throwing them out there? And I think that's too many people nowadays. They just throw wild takes out there, and it doesn't make sense if you really think about it. So I want people to make it make sense, and that's what we're here to do for you. So hopefully this made sense to you guys. You can let me know down in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter again at TDC_Calvin. If you have any thoughts while you're thinking through this. If you disagree, just let me know. But yeah, like I said, I tried to give a little bit more of a deeper dive into it. I know it's been a couple days since this news got announced, but it's been a busy week, man. It's been busy. So hopefully you guys are enjoying all of our off-season recaps, and let me know what you thought about this one. Appreciate you guys for checking this out. And until next time, have a good night.